I realized that it wasn't about, oh, this is a spiritual art form, but it was more that art was spiritual in general, and every art form was a spiritual. And in fact, spiritual was really life. There wasn't really anything that was not spiritual. And coming to practice, coming to dance, coming to life from that perspective that it is a yoga practice.
Oh, I think we froze. Oh, wait, no. They're all moving.
Jen, maybe you can mute other people because I hear other voices.
It looks like everybody is muted and they were automatically muted when they came in. That's really some strange interference.
There's someone that's unmuted. Oh, there. She just muted.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I got a little distracted. So if we just think about yoga as, in the most fundamental meaning of the word yoga is union. To me, it's very obvious when I step into the dance floor that just, being in the body, organizing the body, and making it a vessel of connection between heaven and earth, and moving energy in the body in that way of connecting heaven and earth, and also balancing and cultivating the left and right, the top and bottom, working with these geometrical shapes in the body is automatically makes me feel that connection, that cultivation of oneness, of unity, of connection, of harmonizing and balancing all the basic elements of life. And I find that very unique in a sense for a dance form to be so aligned with cultivating yoga, or cultivating unity in its forms and shapes and rhythmical patterns and movement through space, having that kind of awareness that we are not only creating something beautiful, but that beautiful expression is a yogic practice. It's about it's a sacred spiritual ritual of, as Colleena said, creating positive vibration, and creating this positive vibration by creating harmony, by finding that natural relationship between all the different elements that are playing part in our life and in our body. And then I do want to talk for a moment about the Tribangi, as most of you are already students or dancers of Odissi. You are very familiar, imagine, with the two fundamental positions of Odissi, the Choker and Tribangi. And Chok means square in Sanskrit and also in Oriya, and it speaks of that squareness of that pose, that it's more symmetric and also has more power and strength in a way in its expression, its manifestation, and it's more symmetric. And then we have the Tribangi, which is a unique position for Odissi dance, which is the three bands in the body that lends to a more serpentine kind of expression. It's more spiralic and wave-like and snake-like kind of movement that it lends to that kind of movement to travel through the body. And I find it so exquisitely beautiful to see every kind of body. I mean, there's kind of a magic that happens when people come into the classroom and they are, you know, maybe they're tall and skinny, or maybe they're shorter, and you know, whatever shape and form they come in, when they sort of mold into the Tribangi, it becomes this exquisite sculpture-like form that manifests in their body. And I think that, especially from my perspective as a female, there's something about it that makes me feel very much in my feminine power. And it sort of invites that kind of curvature, you know, that voluptuous, curved female expression it welcomes it to be present and to shine so beautifully through our form. And at the same time, we're maintaining that plumb line of connection between heaven and earth, that you know, column of light is we're maintaining the integrity of that vertical line as we spread a little bit wider, and as we allowing the energy and movement in our body to organize itself around that central column. And that is definitely, I'd say, a unique element of Odissi dance. And it lends itself to that very fluid kind of expression that Odissi is so celebrated for, really, in India. You know, when you compare Odissi to Bharatanatyam or Kathak or even Kuchipudi and other classical dance forms, it has this very kind of electric fluidity to it. So it's very smooth and yet very powerful, and very alluring. And I know that for me, that's something that has been sort of a goal for me to cultivate in my practice, is how to tap into that fluidity through the technique that Odissi has to offer us, and through the inspiration I get from my teachers and from the dance form.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. So exquisite and beautiful and unique in all that it has to offer. And in embodying all that, as we try to grasp and practice this dance, I mean, there's very specific demands on our bodies, and emotionally and spiritually. And, you know, I personally feel that it can be a very intimate journey to yourself as a woman, because it opens and makes us aware of things about our body and feminine spirituality that maybe haven't been present for us before. I wonder if you can talk about the specific demands as you see them, experience them yourselves, and as you witness in your students, regarding the physical aspects as well as the spiritual, emotional of practicing this dance.
Colleena, are you ready to talk, or would you like me to keep going?
Sure, I'll take a turn. Yeah, it's as I listen to you speak, it just more thoughts come up. So as far as the demands on an Odissi dancer, yeah, again, I just come back to these layers, kind of visualizing Odissi at this moment like a crystal or a jewel that has many facets on it, and there, all of these layers, there's a demand. So I guess that's what keeps us so engaged in this art form, is that there's so many faces to it. There's so many facets. I can just, you know, kind of think of a couple. What particularly interests me, again, is the subtle layers at work, because what's incredible when we start to dive into the worldview that surrounds Odissi is that it's so well defined. There's such a well defined philosophy. There's such a well defined and articulated subtle anatomy, and very well defined and well debated perspectives in this worldview. So I just I started with the dance, but then fell into the ocean of philosophy and the subtle vision of the body. So just thinking of a couple points off the top of my head, like one aspect, one demand on the dancer is the musical layer. And I think that maybe the uninitiated Odissi dancer might not recognize this so much as the practitioner. So when you see an Odissi performance, I often hear, it's so soft and so sinuous. And that is there, absolutely, but something that's very present in the practice that I'm sure many of our students are smiling or giggling right now as I talk about the intensity of the physical demand of this dance in the footwork. So the practicality of performing that footwork is very intense, and we stomp the feet very hard for many reasons, but one of the most important reasons is to create music with the body. So the body becomes a musical instrument, and we're slapping our feet to get interlocking rhythms with what the drummer is playing, which embellishes what the melody instruments are playing. So it's quite a complex musical layer that's happening. So how that works in this body, in this experience, is like there's this layer of musical awareness that is constantly on when I'm in my Odissi dancing body, where I'm constantly tracking the music somewhere in the back of my mind, and my body is responding to it even when I'm not thinking about the music. I mean, that's true in any dance form, but the demand on the Odissi dancer is to kind of prove the musicality with a sound, right? So to be involved in the orchestra. So we have this commitment to the music through slapping the feet and getting the sound through our gunguru. So that creates a physical demand specifically on the legs, and which anyone who's done choka stepping or any Odissi choreography, that choreographies can go on 15 minutes, 20 minutes. The demand is quite muscular. It's also a lot of endurance, and so the physical demand is quite intense. And in the entry into Odissi, that's definitely, I feel like that's the heavy door is at the front of this temple. So it's like, if you can get through that first door, I almost feel like that kind of tests the commitment or the determination level in a being as they enter this field. Because again, no matter what your body is like or your goal is in Odissi, that physical demand is the first thing that you confront. And that is, also connected with this musical layer. The mental level, I feel like in Odissi, is with the example of the music, like the music is constantly being tracked in my mind, yet my mind should be free and open to receive what we call bhava or rasa, the bhav of the particular theme that we dance. So the mental demand on a dancer is, I would say, it's the same demand that a meditator has, is to hold a refined state of concentration, and I really believe the dance was designed to be so complex that there's no way a human mind can think about it while we're performing it. So once you actually get to the level of like performing a pallavi or one of the more intricate dances in our repertoire, it's so fast, it's so physical, it's so intricate. In one moment, your fingers are in a mudra, your eyes are moving this way, your torso is moving that way. All these things are happening, and you're acting out a character and holding the storyline. So many layers are at work that there's really no human mind that can contain that all in one moment. So it's like it demands time. It doesn't only demand effort, but it demands a span of time, a space of time that is very expansive. So that's like that space expands with the commitment, and the longer we stay with the dance, the more space we find. I almost feel like the deeper the commitment, the more the space opens up. So the mental aspect of performing something like Odissi is so fascinating, because you think of a meditation as like, you know, holding on to the thought of a mantra, a simple one-pointed focus, whereas Odissi as a meditation is like multiple points of focus, and yet pulling back from those points of focus. So through the training, through the repetition, we program that into the body. And then hopefully in the performance, the mind is absolutely like the still water of a mountain lake, very calm and very receptive, in a perfect world. So that also there's a mental training there, and the emotional aspect. I was thinking, what is the emotional aspect? Well, one of the beautiful ways that we work with the emotional layer of ourself in Odissi is, I mean, in any yogic art, or, you know, in this yogic perspective, the goal is to transcend emotion and emotionalism. So the fluctuations of the mind are not, we are not aiming to stay in the realm of personal emotions, which identify us with our, you know, our ego or our limited self. We are using archetypes in our abhinayas, in the storytelling dances. We're using archetypes to expand our possibilities. And so really what's specific and interesting in Odissi, as opposed to many contemporary works of art, let's say, is that the emotions we're portraying are not our limited self emotions. It's not I don't feel, I mean, maybe I relate to a character I'm portraying, but if I'm portraying Radha gazing at Krishna and that love that she feels, of course I can relate to it, but it's, you know, I'm calling upon a larger source of emotion. It's not my personal emotion. And this is the art of acting, is using riding universal emotions to kind of, I don't know, I would say like to purify our own emotions. So one definition that I just love of abhinaya, which is, you know, the storytelling part of Indian classical dance, is well-organized emotions. And I don't know about all of you out there, but sometimes it doesn't feel like emotions like to stay organized. And, you know, so I just feel like this idea of organizing emotion, especially if we have a degree of detachment, like if they're not our personal, I'm not going on stage as Colleena with Colleena's problems or Colleena's aspirations. I'm going on the stage to embody archetypes and archetypal emotions, and to organize them and to purify them and to find the essence of them. And this all comes into play in our theory of bhava and rasa. We have intricate theory in surrounding Indian arts that that define and categorize and organize and analyze emotions, which we would really call rasas, and how to work with them and how they can be represented in the body. So, you know, this is an incredible layer of the dance. And then the spiritual demands of an Odissi dancer, I think, you know, I've already touched on it, but I just think that the spiritual demands of an Odissi dancer is like when I look at students or fellow dancers, fellow students, when I study Odissi, I think the point is really just to allow the demand is to allow the process to unfold naturally, and I think about the theory of karma. You know, we all come to the dance floor being an analogy for life. We all come to the dance floor with our own baggage, with our own karma that we're bringing from whatever your beliefs may say, but from past lives or from this life or from the choices we've made up until that point in that moment on the dance floor. And we all have more or less to work with in all these different kind of categories. So the spiritual demand is really just to release the expectation, maybe. So, you know, we might expect that as we talk about, and I know I love to talk about the spiritual element of Odissi, but we can't approach that subject with expectation. Like, okay, now I'm doing Odissi, this is supposed to feel a certain way, because sometimes what leads us to a spiritual experience or a transcendent state or, you know, deeper state of awareness is just nitty-gritty work, hard work and repetition. And that is my takeaway from Odissi, is the nitty-gritty, the choka, that, you know, going back to the physical, just the repetition eventually leads from gross to the subtle experience.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's all about staying out of our way, you know, and letting the practice do its magic on us, and not get stuck in our ego afflictions, you know. And for sure, I mean, you know, sometimes I think I'm so grateful that when I started studying Odissi, there wasn't the internet and YouTube, and we didn't have any mirrors. And you know, I didn't practice with a mirror for years, and I don't think I would last if I had to see myself in the mirror, because it's so much hard work initially. And I think that's one of the challenges for a lot of dancers, especially if they already come as an accomplished dancer in another dance form, it's this humbling experience of feeling awkward initially, of feeling clumsy, of the challenge of what Colleena, you have spoken of again so eloquently, of putting together all the layers of rhythm and musicality and cultural context, you know, not to mention all this, you know, adornment that we have on. I think that every dancer that I have trained for the first time, when they're putting all their costuming on and the jewelry and the gunguru and the makeup, they're kind of overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it, you know, the physical weight, but also the sort of cultural weight of like, now I have to, you know, represent. And it's a lot of layers of content to process and integrate and harmonize. And I wanted to say about the emotional aspect of it specifically. You know, you've definitely actually, maybe I will kind of insert a few little pieces that came to mind as Colleena was speaking about the physical expression, the dance, the rhythmical patterns that we, you know, tap with our feet while we are also organizing our body in a specific way, and then our hand mudras and all this movement, you know, all the different layers of movement, our rib cage movement, our neck, our eyes, so on and so forth, is that I find that it's like I have to send my awareness into every cell of my body. It's like my awareness travels through my body all the way to the tip of my fingers and, you know, the bottom of my feet. And it's sort of activating that innate intelligence that is present in our body. So I don't have to be there from here. So it's really about understanding how to have awareness and awaken that intellectual capacity, not intellectual, but intelligence that is not coming from here. It's coming from the body, it's coming from the feet. There's sort of this process of understanding that we can let go. We can kind of relax our shoulders and we can, you know, breathe, let our breath drop deep down into our pelvis. And that, of course, with a lot of training, I'm not saying that's something you just kind of do a little meditation and it all sort of happens. But through the practice, we learn to trust our body to guide us and to develop that innate capacity to hold complex coordination and to have that conversation, you know, with the master and with the melody and with the emotional content of the poem that we might be dancing with, and with the ritual aspect, with the tantra staying present in the transmission of being that kind of archetype holder of, you know, someone who is channeling energy, that it's not personal. So yeah, that is a huge demand that is part of the yoga of this dance form. And I also feel like sometimes I feel like I'm bending time. It's like being a time bender. It's like, I don't know how the heck like I could do, you know, such quick, so many movements in such a short amount of time. So like you said about that feeling of like stretching time or that expansion, and, you know, and then at the same time, it's about bending time. It's about sort of passing through time and being in this timeless space that is completely the master of time. It's just like a really interesting dynamic of as a dancer. When I step onto stage, I want to have that relationship with my musicians where it's not that they guide me necessarily or that I guide them, but it's we are in a conversation in a way. There is kind of that play of feeling like I am the master of the rhythm, even though I'm completely dependent on that, you know, the rhythm to animate me. And it's this beautiful kind of back and forth play that happens on the stage that takes a certain level of, well, practice, obviously, and also trust and being trustful and playful and surrendering, both being in control and in surrender at the same time, letting go. So the bhav, you know, can flow. And speaking of the emotions, you know, it's for me, I've looked at it many times because so many of my students asked me to teach them the you know, abhinaya, the emotional expression, and how to create those emotional expressions, because it's not necessarily so much part of most contemporary dance forms to have such a wide spectrum of very human emotions being expressed through the archetypes of the mythology. And I find that the best way to tap into having a really deep and convincing and authentic and real kind of expression is through allowing the emotions to flow. Again, it's a certain level of trust that I'm not going to get drowned by my emotions, but that I can sort of let them flow and flush through me and harmonize. I feel the technique, again, the theory and the technique that we utilize in our dance form is helping to harmonize those emotions. So then I sort of have them in my disposal, so I can use, anger or compassion or love or whatever that might be in a very, it's sort of right there. It's this layer of emotionality. It's like this ocean of emotions that is well stirred and activated, awakened. And I can just kind of tap into it with a certain expression of my eyes. So a certain mudra, a certain, actually a whole form in my body that can activate that emotion to come out. And I find the whole process a process of harmonizing, of finding a certain sense of peace and calm. And so in a way, it's another yogic practice of being able to trust our emotions to be our allies, and that we can use them for ritual, for certain transmission that is based on, the specific purpose of the demand of the moment, so to speak. Depends on the ritual type that we are performing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for those really thorough and fascinating answers about that. There are a couple of questions I'd like to bring in, if I may, that are in the chat. One of them is a little more technical and practical, and the other one will help us pivot into the art of adornment, which is going to be another really juicy avenue to go down. So Eleanor, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Eleanor says that we tend to associate Tribangi with feminine and Choker with masculine. One of my teachers had an interesting perspective associating Tribangi shape more with masculine energy, connected to some karanas, warrior-like postures, and Choker to feminine, connected to some female representations of birth-giving and earth connection, for instance. I find connecting to both perspectives quite interesting and would love to hear your views on this.
If I may just say a few things, because I think that happens also, when you study Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or yoga or a lot of Eastern spiritual traditions, they, Tantra obviously, they speak of this polarity and they indicate certain attributes as feminine and others as masculine. And then if you go, and the yin yang is such a beautiful exemplification of how the masculine is within, and the black is within the white is within the black, the masculine is within the feminine, and the feminine is within the masculine. So in a way, we have a certain view that we can relate to, of saying I guess it's just a matter of understanding the principle of polarity, of being able to move from one thing to the next, or recognize that polarity that exists. And then most importantly is understanding the unity of the feminine and the masculine, or the Choker and the Tribangi. So in a way, I mean, we do usually associate Tribangi as feminine because of its curves, because it's more curved and serpentine and, snake-like, and it's more of that kind of fluidity, I guess, that we associate with femininity. And then the Choker being more powerful, and associating that kind of that stumping, especially Choker 1, that is sort of like the penetration, that is more of a linear kind of a masculine type of movement, or that's how we sometimes relate to it. And at the same time, like Eleanor rightly said, it's absolutely the Choker is the position of the birthing birthing mother, the primordial mother, and that open pelvis, and for sure that Tribangi is also used for many masculine positions in Odissi dance and in Chow, in the martial art of Orissa, and to show different kind of masculine figures. So I guess it's not one or the other. It's every time you separate something into two, you can separate further into two. You can see the masculine and the feminine within Choker, and you can see the masculine and feminine within Tribangi. And I think what is more interesting about it is to understand that the masculine and feminine energies within us are constantly in play. And when we identify that difference between masculine and feminine for ourselves in our body, we're able to tap into that process of creativity, of creation, of sort of internal lovemaking, if you will. And we want to stay right on that edge of the creative process. We want to sort of amplify that creative energy, so we have more capacity to create and to connect with the forces of creation that are animating us and animating the universe that we live in. And so by sort of having the Choker and Tribangi that are complementary of one another and finding different ways of bringing them together or moving in and out of the positions and weaving them together, we are, I think, accentuating both that power and grace, rhythm and flow, grounding and rising, and all those, all those, and the density and spaciousness, and so on and so forth. All those different kind of polarities are being accentuated not as separate parts, but as integrated parts that are creating more sparks. It's what we are trying to do, so we have more energy to direct into the spiritual cultivation. At least this is my view.
I think that was a perfect answer, and I just want that bell to ring out, and I'll skip to the next question.
All right. Yeah, let's get to the art of adornment. And so Kanu says that she'd love to learn more about the yogic and Vedic art of adornment, especially as it pertains to devotee and temple dancers. And wow, Odissi, the art of adornment is just such a spectacular and enticing aspect of this dance, this shameless commitment to beauty. To beauty and adornment. Let's talk about that. Where do we start? From costuming and fabrics and jewelry and artisans and the makeup. Who wants to get us started? I'm sure we could talk for days about this.
I mean, to me, Colleena, when I before I met Colleena, I mean, obviously, I've seen your photos and your videos, and to me, the way you use the art of adornment is definitely a source of inspiration, and I'd say you're my muse in many ways, in that way of how you utilize that layer of adornment as a path of feminine empowerment. And so I love to hear what you have to say about that.
Thank you. I love that. I didn't know anyone noticed. I also feel that way. Yeah, there's just so much to say, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's, yeah, we could just go on this subject for a while, but I'll try to just draw out a couple points. And I actually, so I thank you, Ravital, for noticing. I do, I have used the Art of Adornment as a layer of my art. I would say one specific way is in my fusion dance. This idea of calling in the femininity, which I find so specific in Indian classical dance, and presenting it in a slightly different light. The adornment aspect of my fusion dance is very specific. So I'm sure you've had this experience, Ravital, or any other Odissi dancer out there. So many times in my life, I've arrived to a theater and maybe in a performance with other artists, and I'm in the dressing room and I pull out my costume bag and I look next to me and there's a contemporary dancer, like pulling on some sweatpants, putting a rubber band in her hair. And I'm like, oh God, this is gonna take me 2.5 hours, like I put my headphones on, I have the mantras playing, I like just start the layering and the layering and the layering of costuming. And I'm looking at this contemporary dancer going, God, that must be so comfortable to dance in your sweatpants. And yeah, I love what you said earlier, Ravital, about the cultural weight. I mean, the physical weight of the costuming, but also the cultural weight that's so palpable. As an Odissi dancer, like my body responded to that statement. It's such an intricate costume that we wear in Odissi, and it is a whole collage of cultural signifiers, and very specifically chosen. In India, that's very much a part of life. I have lived most of my years in India in a village where we have a lot of pilgrims, and sometimes I'll be sitting at the chai shop and I'll just watch people walking by, and oh, she's from Gujarat, oh, she's Rajput, oh, she's from, so the way women dress in everyday life in India is full of also cultural signifiers, caste and community, region. So things like the specific sari that we wear in Odissi dance it has to be should be, according to my teachers, it should be a sari from Orissa. Because that fabric is a statement for an Indian who knows, if you grew up in India, what fabric comes from what region. It's very distinct. And all of the jewelry as well, the specific silver filigree work that we wear in Odissi dance is specific to Orissa, whereas in South India, dancers wear more gold jewelry specific to temple traditions there. So I feel like the one pivotal adornment moment of my life has been getting married, and basically an Odissi dancer dresses like a bride, the female Odissi dancer. And funny enough, that costume somehow is also replicated on the male body, the male Odissi body, because I want to be very clear that men also dance Odissi. It is also a men's dance. But I happen to have a female body, so that's my experience. I can really talk about that. So an Odissi dancer, like I think it was Kannu who mentioned the Devadasis, the Maharis, who were dancing previous to the formation of Odissi as a classical dance form. The temple dancers were ritually married to the deity in the temple. So they would dress like a bride for their husband, who would be Jagannath. So in the Mahari tradition, in the Jagannath temple, they went through a ritual marriage and were viewed as the wives of Jagannath. So this idea of a bride is very particular in Indian culture. because a bride is Lakshmi, meaning full of fertility and potentiality, full abundance and fullness and everything that is auspicious. So I had a very, very traditional Vedic wedding just a few years ago. And I mean, I've been wearing adornment, specifically Indian adornment, for most of my adult life. But on my wedding day, when I was being directed by, we were married in our ashram in Varanasi. And so the priests and the monks were, even the monks, which I was a little surprised, were saying, no, you need this specific ornament. I had to have a mantika, nut, the nose pin, specific necklaces. So basically the bride has, there's a tradition called Sola Shringara, which is, Sola is 16, so the 16 ornaments on the body. And the bride has all this metal on certain points in her body, which just happens to also be beautiful and attractive. And so I remember that feeling of being dressed up as a bride and then entering into the ceremony. Our ceremony lasted 4 days, and it was 4 days of chanting and puja and ritual and offerings. And that feeling of a Vedic ritual, a Vedic marriage ritual, was, I can sum it up as that I felt like a bell being struck, and just like full of positive vibration, just full of goodness and abundance. I mean, after all those good wishes and blessings were poured into us, I just felt this resonance that was very palpable in the body. And so the idea of ritual, as I mentioned before, is to generate positive energy, like if we just keep it very simple. So the idea of auspiciousness, which is inside of ritual, the idea is we're creating this positive energy, but we want to capture it, and we want to share it, and we want to direct it. So when you think about a bride, for example, being poured full of blessings, you know, the bride would have all these ornaments to kind of contain and hold those blessings inside the body, because the body is like a pot. The analogy of the pot comes up all the time in Sanskrit literature and in these traditions. So it's like a pot being filled with auspiciousness, and the jewelry, which metals are used in Ayurveda and Vedic astrology, to as a way of understanding, to contain and to channel and direct energies in the body, which is both physical and subtle. So the idea of the bride is that she's just this container of auspicious energy, and the adornment is an outward lakshana, or a symptom, a sign, a celebration of the fullness that she is, and a way of literally containing that energy in her subtle body. So if we think about the Indian bride, the adornment that is worn by a bride or by an Odissi dancer has this one layer to it. It's also just a physical, a celebration of all that is abundant. I mean, the jewelry represents abundance, so it's the abundance in the ritual aspect of the dance. I really see that. But there's a couple points that came to my mind when thinking about this question. The belt, for example, in Odissi, we also wear a belt, a shiny, sparkly belt in belly dance, but we wear it to show hip movement, whereas in Odissi we use it as kind of defining this separation between the upper body and the lower body, which is often, and again, I just want to remind myself of the beautiful answer that Revital gave about it's never really black and white, it's an exchange, but we often say like the upper body of Odissi is the feminine, the languid, and the lower body is the masculine. So we feel that separation, and we can see it visualized with this belt, this very shiny silver belt that we wear. And the belt, the hips on an Odissi dancer are actually not moving, so they shouldn't move. So they're the center point of the movement that's happening all around. Whereas in belly dance, we wear a belt to show the movement of the hips. So there's so many things inside of the adornment, because there's like a practical, I almost feel like a kind of an exclamation mark with these ornaments. Like we paint the feet with alta, the red vermilion, on the fingertips and on the feet, to show the foot positions and to make it more apparent. And the belt, for example, to show the stationary hips. And in our headdress, the taya, we have this little point which helps to kind of show the tip of the head, the tilt of the head. So there's just a practical kind of sensibility to it. But I have always been really fascinated with the idea in India that we adorn so many parts of the body, and that connects into the idea of the bridal jewelry and the sola shringar, the all these points, these energy points, which are very specific on the body. This point to this point, the heart center up here. So all these energy points being kind of contained and activated through these precious metals. So that's a start to the conversation.
Yeah, I feel like, we may need to let this spill over into another session. I just want to mention the time. It's close to 8:15, but I want to invite Revital to offer what she has on this, and maybe we do expand the conversation next time, because I feel like there's just and this is so interesting, where we can go with this. But yeah,
we can definitely talk more next time. No problem, no rush. Beautifully said, Colleena. I just wanted to say about the metal, like you were saying, it has that energy to it, and metal conduct energy. And so, having the belt, the metal belt is really about sort of the conduction of flow between the masculine and the feminine, the upper body and the lower body, that connection, sort of activating that connection, it's about accentuating and supporting that kind of flow. And I feel like having all this adornment, like you said, about so many body parts being adorned, is that the weight, both the physical and the cultural, and just the process of the ritual of putting all these exquisite pieces of jewelry, one by one, putting them on beautifully and, perfectly aligned and symmetric, and so on and so forth. It gives us a sense of connection, of being grounded. It's like it's grounding, and putting the gunguru, the bells on the ankles, which you traditionally only put when you actually perform a ritual rather than practice in the Odissi tradition. And that also has a certain level of grounding, the weight of it. And speaking about the red color, that we put on the center of our palm and the center of our feet, and obviously our lips, there's a lot of red. There's a lot of symbolism behind the colors that we choose, the red, white, and black. And the red being auspicious, being the color of marriage, of auspiciousness, of good luck, and also of the feminine. And then, the white dots representing the masculine, and the black, red, and white basically are the colors of Tantra, of the masculine and the feminine, the unity between them, the sort of vast shunya that they connect in. And just to kind of, throw in a little pieces into that mandala, into that kind of beautiful visualization of our ornaments. But I want to say that one thing that I would love to talk about a little more, maybe next time, is what does it does to us? What is the transformational process of undertaking that ritual of adornment as a woman, that process of beautifying the challenges that come with it, what it provokes, and what it can offer us as a human being, as a dancer that is taking on this dance form. So maybe we can talk about it some other time.
Yeah, I would really love to continue that, because the art of adornment and where I grew up, there's such confusing messages, to adorn yourself or not adorn yourself, and a lot of judgments around that. And it's just so rich and meaningful and joyful in my experience to engage in this process and ritual as part of this dance. Absolutely brilliant conversation that I'd love to take further if you're both willing next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So for this evening, I guess we'll close there. And if either of you have any final comments, or if anybody just wants to click on their microphone and say hello or goodbye, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us for this really special series, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. I hope you are too. Chat right now too. Thank you so much from Raquel. These conversations are fascinating, informative, and really help shine light on a lot of aspects of Odissi, but also art in general. So appreciative of both of your opening up and sharing your experiences. Yeah. Thank you so much, beloved teachers. Deep bows.
Yes, thank you very much. This is applicable not only to dance, but any kind of physical movement that has rhythm and everything. Thank you. Which has a story and music and
Thank you.
Like artistic swimming.
Thanks for joining. Good night, everyone. See you next time. Looking forward to it.